Guillaume. Guillaume.
Hi everyone, we're back live at the Reluxury Talks. Very pleased to be with you, and it's time to address a very important point, which is about traceability. We have been discussing a lot about circular economy during the last few days, but now we have to go beyond circular economy. We need to go into much more traceability, because traceability, transparency will bring trust. So for that talk, I'm very pleased to welcome on stage Céline DASSONVILLE, co-founder of Ethiwork, and also co-founder of the Federation of the Circular Fashion. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Here next to Céline, Guillaume Kuntz, co-founder of Watch Certificates. And we have remotely with us from Paris, Timothée MACÉ DUBOIS, co-founder of the French Federation of Circular Fashion.
Hi, everyone.
And Aurelia Figueroa, global head of sustainability of Breitling in Switzerland. So she will join us in a couple of minutes. We just have a technical issue that we're currently fixing. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you for being there with us. It's part of the live sessions to adjust to situations. So we're going to have to reshuffle a bit the interview until we get Aurelia on stage with us. So my name is Céline DASSONVILLE. I founded Ethiwork, which is an impact studio that help fashion and luxury brands to accelerate in terms of better footprints, whether it's environmental, social, or cultural footprints. And today I'm delighted to be the one that will animate the discussions between all different experts. Timothée is co-founder of Fédération de la Mode Circulaire. We are part of the same organization. We founded Fédération de la Mode Circulaire together. And Timothée will explain what are the challenges of fashion in terms of implementation of both circularity and traceability. And he will make the link between the fact that circularity needs traceability and traceability needs circularity. It's a double relationship that we have. And what we're going to do, and the intent that we had, is that to draw the parallel and to draw the line between what is happening in fashion and what is happening in the watchmaking sectors. Aurelia, who I hope is going to join her, has launched a quite innovative strategy at Breitling. I don't know if you have heard about it. It was about 3 weeks ago that it was released. It's a CSR strategy that aims at releasing products that ensure full traceability of the origin of the materials. That's why she's been opting for daring choices. Breitling decided to choose lab-grown diamonds and decided to choose what is called impact gold, coming from the SBGA. So I hope she's going to explain you why she took that decisions on what they're trying to achieve at Breitling in terms of sustainability and as well talking about of the change of the markets. With Guillaume, we're going to talk about the solutions. What are the solutions that are both enabling circularity? When we talk about circularity, this is the fact that we can resell a watch to a certain extent, but as well repair a watch. And we're going to look at how we can implement solutions when a watch has been issued to ease its repairability and to ease its resale strategy. So I will invite my guests to present themselves, and I'm going to start with you, Timothée. I've been very light on the presentation of who you are, and I've been very light on the presentation of what is Fédération de la Mode Circulaire is about. So could you present yourself to the audience and explain why Fédération of Mode Circulaire has been created?
Yes, of course. Thanks a lot, Céline. Hi, everyone. My name is Timothée. I'm the co and head of a brand new federation called Fédération de la Mode Circulaire, or Circular Fashion Federation for the non-French speakers here. So the federation was created in 2022 in April, and the federation aims at representing every member to coordinate the development of the French circular fashion, supporting all members in their economic development, and promoting, of course, the values of transparency, circularity, traceability, and impact in the value chain and in the market. So after only 7 months, we already have 150 member companies which are fully committed to engage the future of fashion in a circular way. So around the table today, we gather all the stakeholders from the circular fashion field, from very small businesses such as vintage shops, so-called friperies in French, historical luxury houses and groups such as Kering, Galeries Lafayette, Printemps, some startups and scale-ups such as Crush On, Le Bon Coin, Vestiaire Collective, some brands and circular DNVBs such as Le Slip Français, and some recycling industrials such as Revalorem and GBTEX.
And
So
maybe,
today,
I'm sorry,
yes,
just maybe for those who have been following the talk, Refluence is also a member of Fédération de la Mode Circulaire. Castafiore, that you might have seen, that has got a booth within the Reluxury salon on that propose pre-owned jewelry with a certificate on guarantee, is member of Fédération de la Mode Circulaire. So it's very tiny circular native brands and big brands that aim at accelerating their circularity journey. Sorry for that.
exactly, Céline. Thanks. And we provide each month to our members an institutional watch letter to help them to understand all the recent legal and regulatory topics, and the market newsletter to be aware of the latest news of circular fashion. We organize training sessions, workshops, research works, webinars. Well, our objective, to summarize, is really that the stakeholders know and talk to each other, share the common knowledge, and build projects together, because we think that a market that communicates is a market that evolves better. And finally, we have published recently in September our Livre Blanc, the Common Program for Circular Fashion, which includes 15 draft proposals to help raising circularity and traceability in the fashion sector. For instance, some tax credits for circularity initiatives, improving textile waste collection, contributing to recycling innovation, circular VAT. So as you can see, the topics of traceability and circularity is in the heart of our missions and our raison d'être, because we know that the circularity market needs traceability to be competitive today.
So thank you so much, Timothy. And I think what is interesting as well, when we look at fashion sector and when we look at the hard luxury sectors, it's that fashion is driving the tendency and the trends in terms of transparency, traceability, and regulations. So there is a lot to learn from the fashion sectors. And we're going to see with Aurelia, that I'm just seeing on screen, what can be done, I would say, in the watchmaking sectors. So Aurelia, I'm delighted that you have been able to join us. So I will invite you to present yourself, and as well to present the journey that you've been implementing at Breitling to both work, I would say, on traceability of the materials and offering as well circularity.
Thanks a lot, Céline. It's really good to be here with all of you today. Good morning from Grenchen. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in Geneva. And I'm really excited to join our panelists and to join Céline and to join all of you for the discussion today. At Breitling, we've been working on our sustainability strategy for the last 2 years across the pillars of product, planet, people, prosperity, and progress. And as it specifically relates to traceability, we're delighted to have been able to launch the Super Chronomat 38 Origins in October, which is able to provide full scope traceability for the gold and the diamonds that are on the watch. And I think to really engage all of the stakeholders along the supply chain in a really meaningful way. Circularity is obviously also a key topic for us at Breitling, so I'm really looking forward to hearing from my fellow panelists and to our discussion today.
Thank you so much, Aurelia, and we will go further in detail of the implementation of the origin strategy within Breitling. But I would like to introduce as well Marc AMBRUS. Could you present yourself and could you explain as well how, what is the watch certificate and which services do you provide?
Sure. So I'm Guillaume Kunz. I'm the co-founder.
Yeah.
I replaced Marc.
I'm sorry about that. We changed the speaker at the last minute, so they are both co-founder.
Yeah.
So please present yourself.
So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk a bit about watch certificate. In a nutshell, watch certificate is an ecosystem that connects the stakeholders in the luxury second-hand watches. We started to authenticate second-hand watches, and now we start to work also with manufacturers. And the idea is that we have partner watchmakers, experts, marketplaces, and all work together, and we build digital duplicate of a watch with HD pictures and all the information about the watch. And this is actually transferable. So it's not only a one-time certificate, it's you can update it and you can give the ownership to the next owner. So it creates a traceability ecosystem.
Okay, great. So it's helping to resell and to repair, but keeping the information about the watch and preserving its authenticity. So let's just take a big step and look at the market trend from a fashion and a watchmaking point of view. Timothée, could you explain us how circularity and traceability are intertwined, and especially how traceability is helping what we call sustainable sourcing? Because when we talk about fashion sectors, we know, all of us, that we've got major issue in terms of environmental footprints, and that most of the luxury brands are working on that to have better footprints in terms of environmental impact and social impact. So, Timothée, the floor is yours. Can you share some insight?
Yes, I will try to be quick because that's a huge topic for the circular fashion. Of course, I think that first of all, sustainable sourcing needs traceability. And I think that sustainability needs circularity too. And finally, circularity needs traceability. So as you said, it's a double or triple relation between circularity, sustainability, and traceability. So first of all, what is traceability? For fashion, or actually for other sector, it's for the ability to trace the whole life cycle of a product from the raw materials to the consumer to disposal and recycle. So of course, improving transparency and traceability has become a priority for the textile and the clothing industry to increase its ability to manage the value chains more effectively. So for me and for Circular Fashion Federation, traceability benefits to every stakeholders in the production and consumption chain, because the workers and the environment are protected. The companies and brands can avoid, of course, some reputational risks, and the consumer get all the information it needs. Of course, a lot has been done for traceability by the French and EU officials, but for us, it's never enough. So we think that public bodies really need to foster innovation in traceability, thanks to consumer information, environmental labeling, EU digital product passports, for instance. So I will just say a few words about, first of all, the materials traceability, then the environmental traceability, and to conclude, the social traceability. which all help the sustainable sourcing and the rise of sustainable consumption and production. So for materials, there is, first of all, the consumer information, which is very important to raise the consumption of circular goods and circular textiles. In France, we have a décret du 29 avril 2022, 29th of April 2022, about about the information about the percentage of recycled fibers, about the recyclability of the product, dangerous materials, and geographic traceability for every step of the production. So that's a very important text in France. In the EU, there is the Strategy for Sustainable and Circular Textiles, published in March 2022. EU Commission will introduce some information requirements via a digital product passport. So it's very important. It should be done maybe in 2024. So there will be a digital product passport for every textile goods based on mandatory information requiring circularity. The European Commission will review the textile labeling regulation and will introduce some mandatory disclosure of other types of information, such as product size and the country where the manufacturing process took place. So, of course, the consumer really need this information to use and to consume some circular goods. So this was for the consumer information. For the environmental traceability, we will have in France the environmental labeling to inform the consumers about the environmental and social impacts of a product or a service. It will be mandatory in 2023, as written in the Article 2 of the law Climat et Résilience. Currently, 11 methodologies are being tested and assessed by the French Ministry for Environment. And finally, a standardized method will be chosen and implemented, maybe in the beginning of 2024. In parallel, in EU, there is the PEF, Product Environmental Footprint, which is a methodology that quantifies all environmental impacts over the life cycle of a product. For the Federation of Circular Fashion, we really need to be careful that the French and the EU methodologies are harmonized. And of course, yeah.
So just to put that in a context, it's mean that, I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago, there was a scandal about Burberry burning its stock of unsold materials. And we have to be honest and transparent that in many fashion brands, luxury brands, some of the unsold material were just burned and not repurposed. Because it was the practice, and when you are a luxury brand, you don't want to decrease the value of your goods. And what is happening now is this destruction of the stock is no longer possible. And it's very interesting because there is a new creativity that is unveiled, such as with petitage or such as with upcycling approach. And it's a whole new economy that the luxury sector is embracing to use existing materials and to better trace the materials that they are using to craft the product. So tomorrow, whatever you buy that is a fashion clothes coming from a luxury brand will have to say where the crops have been coming before being transforming, and this whole process of sourcing the raw materials to put it in the market will be ranked with an A to F score that will assess the environmental footprint of the product. And one thing that we have to have in mind is that it's touching the fashion sectors as being mandatory for 2024. So it's tomorrow, and it's likely that it's going to be quite the same situations for art luxury, being watchmaking and jewelry. So I give you back the floor, but I just wanted to, make that very tangible for you from a consumer standpoint and from an actor of these sectors. So Timothée, please, do you want to?
Yes, of course. There is also, as I said, a social traceability, which is really needed for circular fashion market. I won't come back to the Rana Plaza crashing, but in France we have the duty of vigilance. Actually, we have been the first country in the world to adopt this corporate duty of vigilance law, which requires the French companies to establish, publish, and implement some measures to identify some abuse to human rights and fundamental freedoms. So this is very important. And based on this example, the European Commission has adopted in February 2022 a proposal for a future directive on sustainability due diligence. So it's also very important. Well, now we will have all the laws that enables us to have a social traceability of textiles. However, of course, this proposal must respect international trade laws. So now we need to, even on the international scale, to develop an international framework on transparency, because the textiles market really needs transparency and traceability for social impact.
Great. Maybe that's linked me to have a discussion with Aurelia. So when we talk about the art luxury sector, whether it's jewelry or watchmaking sectors, there are some sustainable sourcing issue in terms of sourcing with full traceability diamonds or precious stones. The sourcing as well of gold is quite critical because this is materials that are coming from either mines, and we know that traceability for mines are sometimes very difficult to achieve, and that any materials that is extracted from mines has got a quite strong impact on the biodiversity, on the CO2 emissions, and there is as well working conditions that can be questions. You know, who is extracting the precious stone, how it is extracted, can we know exactly where it's coming from? And so far, if we are being honest, the supply chain of watchmaking sectors in terms of precious metals and precious stones, it's not that transparent. So Aurelia, could you explain us what has been your journey to implement sustainable sourcing, and what the current situation on the market has led you to make daring choice?
Thanks a lot, Céline. And to pick up on the points that were just being raised by Timothée, I think that transparency and traceability are key, along with the social and environmental impacts of our sourcing. So I just really want to concur with some of the points that he's raised. And indeed, when we first assessed what our sustainability priorities were 2 years ago by engaging a range of internal and external stakeholders, we saw that 3 top priorities were social impacts along the value chain, environmental impacts along the value chain, and product integrity. So subjects exactly like traceability and transparency, along with supplier engagement. So we received these very clear marching orders from our stakeholders that we should proceed in order to really develop a meaningful input in each of these 3 areas. And upon reviewing our supply chain in its full scope, we concluded that it was most urgent to proceed with addressing these in gold and diamond sourcing as a first step, and of course applying this more broadly as well. Now, you brought up very rightly the environmental and the social impacts that we need to consider, and we really made the decision that first we needed to be able to guarantee traceability, then we could make claims about the origin of the product and each step of its chain of custody along the supply chain. And when we reviewed the options for gold and diamond sourcing, seeking to achieve those social and environmental impacts while enabling traceability, it became clear to us that at Breitling, given the business that we are operating, we had the greatest opportunity to achieve the 3 of these by sourcing responsible, artisanal and small-scale mined gold, and by sourcing lab-grown diamonds. So we are in the process of making the transition to 100% traceable gold from responsible ASM sources by 2025. We partner with the Swiss Better Gold Association as the first and only brand to source 100% Swiss Better Gold. And we are working towards procuring 100% lab-grown diamonds by suppliers who are certified according to the SCS 007 Sustainability Rated Diamond Standard by the end of 2024. And we've already been able to launch our first collection, which has fully traceable gold from one specific Swiss Better Gold mine to the product, and lab-grown diamonds from one specific grower who is able to achieve the certifications that we request of our suppliers. We also have a very personal relationship with our suppliers, which allows us to really drive those aspects related to social and environmental impact along the value chain. And I think it's really these three key issues with which we're faced today in terms of how do we ensure the three of these, which may have some asymmetry among them at times, but how do we creatively work together to find those solutions for us to be able to take nature and society hand in hand, and as they rightly are, and at the same time in the activities that we're pursuing across our sustainability strategy.
Aurelia.
I think I'll maybe stop there, but I'm glad to go deeper into any of those subjects.
Yeah, so Aurelia, I just would like to ask you two questions. Why haven't you opted for recycled gold? Because it could have been one of the solutions, and I would like us to explain you why you haven't considered that so far the market is able to meet your traceability to the origin and with recycled gold. And I would like you to explain us why you haven't opted for natural diamond so far for the MACÉ.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we wanted to enable traceability. So we knew then for gold, this was really then going back to the origin of the gold. And again, we saw the area where we could have the greatest social and environmental impact to be through positive engagement in the ASM sector and responsible ASM sourcing. That being said, we segregate our gold scraps from Swiss Better Gold mines, and we reintroduce them, of course. I mean, this is a really high value commodity for which great measures have been taken to ensure its traceability. So we reintroduce that into the supply chain. But we really wanted to be able to guarantee origin, and for us, recycled was not a means towards guaranteeing origin. The same for diamonds. So obviously in our industry, we're sourcing the MACÉ diamonds. We're not sourcing the larger stones. And for MACÉ, for us to be able to have full scope traceability, the option was clear. It was lab-grown diamonds, and lab-grown diamonds from responsible suppliers upholding the highest social and environmental standards, and being able to certify the value chain at each step along the way to guarantee chain of custody. So in terms of traceability, those were the clear decisions that we made, and this is the reason that we've made the choice to source 100% traceable and responsible ASM gold and lab-grown diamonds.
Just getting back to the lab-grown diamonds, there are sometimes some polemic about the fact that lab-grown diamonds are just not so environmental friendly because they use a lot of energy to be produced. Can you clarify what you say about the fact that you are choosing a lab-grown producer that are responsible? So how do you manage the footprints of this lab-grown diamond?
It's such a good question, Céline, and I'm always happy when it gets raised. So the way that we guarantee this is as a first step, each of our suppliers, so the growers of the diamonds, are required to be 100% climate, not carbon, but climate neutral. We know that this is only a first step, so that's why we work with each of our suppliers directly and personally in order to support, in some cases, their transition to 100% clean energy. So, for example, in the last year, we deployed the Breitling Carbon Fund. We at Breitling place a shadow price on carbon, or a voluntary price on carbon, of 40 Swiss francs per ton, following the guidance of the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. And we're able to create a carbon fund that we disperse for high quality offsets, yes, but also for insetting along our value chain. So, for example, in the last year, we've supported one of our producers of lab-grown diamonds to begin installing solar PV directly at their operation sites. Meanwhile, our other suppliers, where they are not already using low-carbon energy sources, are in the process of transitioning to those. Climate is a really important topic, and others like biodiversity and water deserve a place too. And we feel very confident that our switch to lab-grown diamonds from mine diamonds implies a very positive impact in terms of our biodiversity and water bottom line as well. So these are other key points that we kept in mind too.
And for those that were with us this morning, it's related to the conversation that we had with the CEO of Everledger. She was explaining that the way the sector was moving, especially the luxury sectors, it was by creating a green blueprint, which means that more and more we're going to trace the impact of the origin of the materials and assess them according to the international standard in terms of what they emit and how can this can be reduced. And it's leading to huge opportunity because the more we know what is our value chain about, the better we can pay the people that are participating in creating those goods and to go beyond just fair wage, but to go toward living wage so that the craft of the luxury good is not just the beauty of the product in itself, but it's a positive impact that is created all through the value chains. So if we go back to the fashion sectors, because fashion sectors has been the one leading the change, Timothée, can you explain us what is happening in terms of the relationship between sustainability and circularity? Because sometimes we do not connect circular solution with the fact that we achieve better footprints socially and environmentally speaking.
Yes, of course. I think that for a product to be really sustainable, it actually needs to be circular. Today, we know that textiles is only second to the oil industry in generating pollution, accounting for approximately 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases emissions annually. And we know that every year millions of tons of garments are manufactured, worn, and thrown away. So, and moreover, the textile industry is one of the major contributors of plastic microfibers entering the oceans. It is planned that by 2050, the textile industry will use up to 25% of the world's carbon budget. So it's a huge amount of water, of energy, and of chemicals. So we really need a circular economy today for textiles because it creates better products and services for customers. It contributes to a resilient and blooming industry and helps the environment. So yes, recycling of textiles and to engage in the closed loop recycling is a critical opportunity to both reduce the extractive costs of materials and to limit textile waste.
And just to connect to the subject of luxury, if you look at Kering or if you look at LVMH or Richemont, they all have issued their circularity journey, and they are all implementing new solutions so that waste is becoming the best material to recreate goods. And in the near futures, we're talking about 2024, there will be an obligation to release product that will have at least 20% of recycled materials embedded within it. So this is an agenda that is coming really fast, and it's also a new area of creativity. And maybe one point to have in mind as working in the sector for luxury brands, many of them are working on what we call eco-design. So in the watchmaking sectors and in the jewelry sectors, eco-design was a bit by design because you don't throw away precious stones, gold, and you've been always very careful about managing the product that are using. In fashions, there was no eco-conception by design, and sometimes you had huge waste within the craft of different products. But all the big groups are trying to reshuffle the mindset of creative directors so that by design the product is becoming circular. And becoming circular, it means sometimes not mixing different materials. For example, a textile that will have elastane or derivative product from the petroleum industry will not be recyclable. A product that is recyclable is a product that is made of virgin, not mixed material, but just single materials. So there are tremendous interesting stuff that is happening in terms of eco-design everywhere. Maybe I will just go back to this subject of promoting as well second-hand product, because Reluxury, we can see today at the Reluxury event, is really about as well easing the reselling value of the goods. I would like to know what are you offering in terms of possibility to better resell, and how do you implement it? How do you work with both the consumer and the brands? Because I think you've got a business model that is kind of like B2B and B2C.
Yeah, B2B2C, actually. Okay. But I think it's interesting to shed a light on what happens after the product is produced. And we can have a look. There are millions of watches out there. And so maybe before thinking about how we build the next ones, we can see how we extend the life cycles. I mean, a watch can live 50 years, 100 years. That's a huge life cycle. And so we work on a technology and an ecosystem that allows to make those items live longer and have more owners, and ensuring the traceability. And so to go back to the business model, so Watch Certificates is B2B2C because we built the system with the final owner in mind. So this is the important topic. We start our value just before the watch is sold at the store, because after a watch is sold, we have to understand that it's easy to mess with a watch. Each part can be replaced. 100% of the elements can be switched with a counterfeit, and so we intervene here. We know that if we want to enable resale of luxury watch over time, we need to build trust. And to build trust, we need to be able to assess a watch, even if it was sold 2 months ago. We need to be sure that everything is still authentic. And if some parts are changed, which can happen, so this is 1986. Of course, the glass was changed. It's not an issue if the buyer knows it. This is very important in our approach, is to have this full transparency. And people can buy things, but they know exactly what they're buying. That's the
guarantee that you bring. It's interesting because we can see how watch that didn't have a digital passport can have one with your solution. I think that at Breitling, you've been working on creating a digital identity of your watch. And I would like you, Aurelia, to share your strategy in terms of release of new watches, but as well as how do you approach the second-hand market? We've seen that there was different, we had different talk. We had Richard Mills that was saying that he was managing his own vintage strategy. And we had as well very interesting talks from eBay or from Watchbox that were explaining how they accelerate the resale market with bringing values with as well certificates. So Aurelia, can you explain us what is Breitling's strategy about pre-loved markets?
So I will comment on those points, especially as they relate to the sustainability area, Céline. So let me take up the declarations that we release. And we were really glad to pilot our approach with the Super Chronomat 38 Origins, wherein we are enhancing the NFT that accompanies the watch and every Breitling watch today with further data about the sustainability. So each step of the supply chain, we're able to disclose those parties that have been involved and their key sustainability criteria that they've been meeting to date. This approach is what we intend to have on all products moving ahead. And as we've already indicated in the last month, that we will be releasing information, especially on key materials like gold and diamonds, to our suppliers. And for sure, the secondhand market is a really interesting point on circularity that requires a lot of review. I don't think that I can provide further comments on that right now, but it is certainly a fascinating topic, especially from this perspective of sustainability. So we're looking forward, in summary, to really be able to expand on the sustainability declarations that we provide to clients in a very transparent, very easy and accessible manner. Also to complement what we already do in terms of transparency in our annual sustainability reporting.
Thank you very much. Timothée, that's lead you to ask you questions about how traceability, especially in regard of the pre-love market, it's managed from Fédération de la mode circulaire. We had some people such as Refland, Fairly Made, that came and that explained a bit what was going on. Can you explain the work that is done at Fédération de la mode circulaire on this topic?
I think that indeed, as you said, a lot of companies that are members of the Federation focus their business model on creating some solutions to help traceability in order to improve circularity. So I would say that traceability, first of all, it enables a better, easier, and more efficient recycling process. As you said, all the recycling factories that are members of the Federation know that the textile fibers, they are able to know the textile fibers in the garment and how to recycle them. So they need to have a digital labeling, they need to have a product passport, and these tools will enable the rise of circularity. Secondly, I think that traceability, as Aurelia said, will enhance consumer information and increase this desire for sustainable and circular products. It will help to prevent from greenwashing, and of course, the consumer is more able to buy a product if there is a story behind. And this is our goal in the Federation of Circular Fashion: is to raise sensitization of consumers for the desire for circular products. For instance, we have the Encore project, which is a member of the Federation. It's a kind of storytelling platform enabling the sellers of secondhand products through a QR code to tell the story behind every garment or accessories. So I think it plays an important role in the perceived value of the object by the consumers. We also have Clear Fashion to enhance the consumer information about the impact of the garment. And finally,
just to clarify, Clear
Yes.
Fashion, it's like Yuka. I don't know if you know Yuka. You scan the barcode, and then it's giving you a rating system on how sustainable is the product according to their standards.
Yes, and with Clear Fashion, the consumer can, of course, compare the products with each other and then choose the clothes that best fit with its values. So that's great to evaluate a garment and to analyze its composition. And of course, we also have Fairly Made. It's a B2B company which helps to elaborate sustainable products with transparent supply chains. So I think that traceability helps either the consumer, but also the retailers to sell better circular products. And we at the Federation, our challenge is to help the competitiveness of the circular fashion market and then to increase, of course, the desire of consumers to buy circular products.
Okay, great. Aurelia, that's led me to one question. Can you just explain how you achieve the traceability and with who you've been working to map the risk and to monitor environmental performance? And then explain us what is your vision of Reluxury? Where does the sector go and what you are trying to achieve at Breitling in terms of redefining what luxury is about? In regard of sustainability expectations and new millennials' expectation.
Thanks a lot, Céline. So when it comes to enabling traceability, we were really keen to pick the right partners at each step of the supply chain in order to be able to have traceability and to have the opportunity to evaluate social and environmental impact. So for gold, like I mentioned, this was partnering with the Swiss Better Gold Association, partnering with responsible refineries, especially like MKS Pump, our sourcing partner, who is really conducting key elements of the due diligence all along the way and enabling that traceability and chain of custody. And by working with partners like the Swiss Better Gold Association, like MKS Pump, like Touchstone, the mine in Colombia from which we source our gold, including for the Origins collection, is that we are able to have this one-to-one connection. So to get to your point of monitoring performance, to be able to assess the social impact that's being had as a result of the distribution of the premium, to support social projects in the local communities, to be able to really assess environmental performance. And here we were able to count on the partnership of the Swiss Better Gold Association to conduct a best-in-class first example of really high-quality primary data gathering at ASM mine sites in order to support our broader efforts at Breitling on climate action and climate protection. And the same for the lab-grown diamond sourcing. We were able to guarantee this full scope traceability thanks to the best-in-class practices of SCS in their 007 sustainability rated diamond standard, which provides a totally new to the industry means of really testing these diamonds in order to guarantee origin, and then really being able to have this certification along the value chain that relates not only to traceability, but also climate neutrality, social considerations, and environmental impact, to be able to attest to those measures that have been taken at each step. And in terms of redefining luxury, for me, this really relates to the following. It relates to status. And obviously our industry is a key means of showing status, and most people in our society today seek status in some way. So to the extent that the luxury industry, which plays a role in defining societal notions of status, how can we associate status to not be only a high quality heritage product, but also to be a product where one can attest to the social and environmental impacts that have been achieved from the origin of the materials to the final product, to the consumer and beyond. So this is definitely what I have in mind when it comes to redefining luxury today.
Thank you so much. This is such an inspiring definition of a good that stands for goods in terms of craft, but always all across its value chain. From your standpoint, what is your definition or vision of what Reluxury is about today and where it's heading?
Yeah, so first our DNA is really about that, as I explained earlier, making the life cycle of luxury items longer, and especially watches, because it's very specific. I think that one of the challenges that we face today is that the brands have to embrace the fact that after the watch is sold, it's in another market, and every year people go and less to the official service centers to have the watch, maintained. And this is the reality, and the value for them to be able to connect with such an outside ecosystem is very important, because then they can have traceability with data that are outside of their own network. And I think this is really the opportunity and also the challenge in the market right now.
So you are acting as a third trust partners that handles the life of the product when it's been sold once, to both serve the need of the customers and maybe of the brands that have been initially created the watch.
Yeah, absolutely. For the consumer, the idea is that his watch is maintained, the history of the watch is safe. So for him, it's great. He can insure his watch at the market value, things like that. And for the manufacturer, it's a way to get data live from the market to know when the watch changes hands, for example. Obviously, RGPD compliant. But I think it's very different benefits that they get from a similar product. And as I said earlier, we are an ecosystem, so we don't have in-house watchmakers. We provide a solution to those experts and watchmakers, and they actually get paid every time they do an inspection on a watch or validate an inspection. And I think that's very important because we need to foster this ecosystem in order to make it sustainable and make it scalable. We need people that literally earn money and they want to do watch inspection because they're going to make money doing that. And this is how we make it a larger scale system.
That's very interesting because it goes back to a conversation that we had about craftsmanship and the fact that the Reluxury approach is as well something that can give back to the original DNA of luxury, working more and more with artisans on craftsmanship, on supporting an ecosystem of know-how that need to be pursued. I will, Timothée, let you conclude this panel, maybe by sharing your vision of Reluxury from a fashion standpoint from the Fédération of la Mode Circulaire. What would be your view of what we are likely to see as a redefinition of luxury?
Thank you, Céline. It was a great talk, and I think that Reluxury really needs to become luxury in the mind of consumers and companies. And I think that this kind of event and this kind of discussion we had showed that this mentality change has already started. I believe that the real luxury of tomorrow, as you said, will be to consume some responsible garments with lower impact on the planet in terms of GHG, of recycled fibers and stuff like that. And the real luxury too, and will be, and it's the same for watches, will be to know the truth behind who made your clothes or your watches, where it comes from, and what materials were used to make it. So to conclude, I would say that it's like a good wine. I think that real luxury garments or watches will have greater value after some years than they just got just out of the factory.
So thank you so much. I would like to invite the audience to raise questions if you've got any. And I think it's very interesting to see that the redefinition of luxury is moving toward better impacts, both at the environmental and social level. And what I think very interesting as well, it's that luxury brands are not seeing themselves as just luxury brands. They are seeing themselves as responsible for an ecosystem that go through the origin of the precious material that they're using up to the distribution of it. And it can lead to new services such as reparation, such as authentication of the goods. And I'm seeing that as a very creative field and a very positive future for the sectors. Does any one of you has got a question? Yes, please.
Hello, thank you for the very interesting panel. Just one question, and if it's possible to have the different people in the panel to give the answer. If you were to prioritize in order of importance for you at the current moment, because it can evolve over time, what is the greatest driver on traceability for you now? Is it compliance? Is it because the consumer or the market is demanding it? Is it because there's a regulatory, there's a broader environmental program that you need to meet, and therefore you're doing it as part of that? Some other driver?
I'm going to start maybe to ask Aurelia to respond this question from a brand point of view.
Thanks, Céline. It's a fantastic question. And to me, I can answer it in one word: credibility.
So, Timothée, can you respond to this question in one word, knowing that you represent a coalition of both brands, solution distributors, and reparation services. So, as you've got many stakeholders, you might have more words to respond.
I would say that, according to me and the Federation, the first driver in traceability would be the consumer information, because I think that there is a triptych between there are the consumers, the governments, and the companies, and I think that to help the consumer to know whether a product is circular, sustainable, it will help the companies to sell better all the circular products. So yes, and I think that this consumer information will be mandatory soon. So I think that one of the drivers is, of course, the consumer information, but it will be helped by the government laws and decrees. And I think that and we need standardized definition. We need standards in the EU level or international level to avoid that only French companies or only EU companies follow and respect the mandatory law. So yes, I think that we need standards about and international laws about consumer information, mandatory consumer information, but for every companies.
And from what certificate point of view,
Yeah.
how would you respond to questions?
So from our point of view, really in touch with the people who buy and sell watches, I would say market value. I know it's very straight to the point, but if a product has a traceability, you know, when you resell a watch, if it has the original papers, it adds 5 to 20% of value, market value. So if you have a perfect traceability with blockchain system, it's definitely adding market value and make it easier and faster to resell. So it's a very straightforward answer, but it's market value for me.
And maybe to summarize from my standpoint, working with different luxury brands and being part as well as a Fédération de la Mode Circulaire, it's that there are many drivers, and all of the driver counts. One that counts a lot is the consumer expectations, because often there was no questions when you were pushing the door of a luxury shop. You were taking for granted that everything was perfect. But there are, this is not always the case, not because the brands are bad in themselves, but because the supply chain of luxury craft are really, really tough. For implementing traceability. The driver is coming from the regulation. We're seeing it. What is happening is fashion is going to come to the luxury sectors, and it's better to anticipate. And when we implement traceability, I think that there is a responsibility as a luxury brand to do it in partnership with the supply chain, because supply chain have got less margin on implementing full traceability, required a new type of work that maybe suppliers were not used to do it. So they need to be trained and they need to be accompanied. And then if you look at the goodwill of what is a luxury brand cannot afford any scandal within their supply chain. And nowadays, I think that working with the Uyghur or maybe having mines that have got awful conditions is no longer possible. So I would say that that's a question of credibility, authenticity, of protecting as well the brand value and standing for something that we can be proud of as a consumer. Any other questions?
Hello. I'd like to react to Guillaume's comment earlier on when you talked about market value. I think there is something even more fundamental in what you're doing. It's trust. I mean, I come from a financial background. I studied finance. I worked in the finance industry for many, many years. If you have trust between buyers and sellers, you're creating better liquidity, maintaining the value, and you're creating a deal flow automatically. And therefore, you're maintaining market value.
Yeah, for sure. I was making it a shortcut, but I do agree, absolutely.
And let's go back to discussions that we had previously in other talks about the value of community that you create when you put forward this trust and this traceability that sometimes comes with the NFT and enable new ways of leveraging the community and creating new relationships.
Absolutely.
Are we done? Are we all set? Or is there one last question that someone wants to ask to one member of the panel? So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you for our amazing panelists that have been adjusting to changes, and change are part of I would say, our daily businesses. So thank you so much for sharing your insight and paving the way to maybe inspire others to walk the talk that we are in it.
Thank you very much for this amazing talk. Thanks to you for having made it even with 30 minutes delay. We will start again for this morning, start again at 1:30 with a book signing, and then start all the talks again at 2 p.m. So please have a nice break and see you later. Thanks for coming.
Bye.